Amara stepped out of her house, her tiny feet carefully navigating the stony path that led to St. Charles School, the only school in Elmo village. Clutched in her hand was a small plastic lunchbox filled with jollof rice with a little piece of meat, a meal her mother had packed for her before leaving for her stall in the local market. As Amara walked, she passed the usual turn by the old bakery wall, and there he was again, an old, homeless man. He always sat in the same corner, under a big tree. His clothes were torn in several places, and his feet, bare and cracked, rested on a flattened cardboard. Children were often warned not to go near him. She had seen him around a couple of times, but on this particular day she didn't know why she felt the way she felt. The old man looked so hungry, weaker and frailer. Amara stopped walking. She looked down at her lunchbox. Then she looked at him again. A quiet war began in her heart. But I'll be hungry, she thought. And Mama will scold me. Then she remembered the chin-chin and coconut candy her mother's friend had brought from the city the night before. They were in her school bag, meant to be her treat during break time. That could be enough to hold her till the end of the day, she thought to herself. Without a second thought, she turned around and walked back toward him. He didn't see her at first. His head was bowed, eyes half closed. But as her tiny shadow fell across his weathered feet, he slowly lifted his head. Amara knelt beside him, gently placing the lunchbox in front of him. "I want you to eat this, Grandpa," she said with a soft smile. "It's rice and meat." The old man blinked. For a moment he couldn't speak. He stared at the box, then at her, then back at the box. I don't understand," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're giving me your food." Amara nodded. "I have snacks. I'll be okay." Tears welled up in the old man's eyes before he could stop them, and just like that, the dam broke. The old man burst into tears. Not the soft, quiet tears of gratitude, but heavy, shaking sobs that racked his fragile frame. He held the lunchbox to his chest, like it was treasure, like it was worth more than gold. Amara didn't know why he was crying so much, but she placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Don't cry, Grandpa. It's okay." He looked at her, his face soaked with tears. "What's your name, little angel?" "Amara," she replied. "Amara," he repeated, as if the name itself was holy. "Bless you, my angel. Bless you forever." People across the road turned briefly, then kept walking, but Amara didn't move. She waited, watching him cry, as if she knew that tears were part of the healing. After a while, she gave him one last smile, rose to her feet, and walked toward the school gate, humming to herself, skipping slightly. The old man watched her go until she disappeared into the compound. Then, still shaking, he opened the box. The aroma hit him immediately. Soft jollof rice laced with that unmistakable home-cooked love. A small piece of meat sat on top, like a crown on treasure. His tears returned. He hadn't tasted proper food in weeks. Most days he scraped leftover bread from dustbins. Some days nothing. But today this child had given up her only proper meal. He picked up the spoon tucked neatly into the corner of the box. His hands were filthy, but he didn't care. With trembling fingers, he scooped a bite and brought it to his lips. He groaned, and as the rich, spicy flavor touched his tongue, he groaned with emotion. It wasn't just food. It was kindness. It was love. It was hope, wrapped in foil paper by a child who had so little, yet gave so much. 9-year-old Amara was the only child of Nkechi, a petite, soft-spoken woman whose hands were rough from years of hustling in the Anioma local market. Their home was a tiny mud house on the edge of the village with a leaking roof and squeaky wooden door. There were nights when rain dripped onto their butt, and all they could do was place a container and shift to a dry corner. They had nothing fancy, but they had each other. And Amara? She was sunshine. Everyone in the village knew her for her manners, her smile, and the way she always greeted elders with courtesy, like a little queen with no crown. She had never known her father. Every time she asked about him, Nkechi would pause, breathe deeply and simply say, "He is late. He died when you were a little child." Nkechi was a petty trader who sold vegetables and soup ingredients in the dusty local market. She also had a little garden at the back of her hut where she planted some vegetables and pepper for consumption. They lived from hand to mouth, and Nkechi struggled to pay her daughter's school fee. Despite all these, they were very happy and contented. Amara never complained. And that morning, when she gave her lunch to the homeless man, it wasn't because they had plenty. It was because her mother taught her that kindness is life. At the close of school that afternoon, Amara happily skipped home with her backpack swinging behind her and a gentle hum on her lips. The day had been long, and her stomach grumbled faintly. Those coconut candies and chin-chin didn't quite fill her up, but her heart was full. But as she pushed open the crooked wooden door of their home, she saw her mother in the corner of the room peeling some cassava. She looked up and smiled at her daughter, but her smile vanished almost immediately. "Amara, where is your lunchbox?" she asked with a stern look. Amara froze. Her fingers held the edge of the door. "Mama," Amara began slowly, "I gave it to someone." The cassava fell from her mother's hand. "You did what?" "I gave it to someone," Amara repeated, lowering her gaze. "To that old man who always sits near the school gate. He looked very hungry today." For a moment, silence filled the tiny room. Then, "You gave away your food?" Nkechi's voice rose. "The only food you had today. Amara, have I not told you we don't have enough to be wasting things?" Amara took a cautious step forward. "I didn't waste it, Mama. I gave it to someone who needed it more. I ate the chin-chin and coconut candy Auntie Nena brought. I was okay," she quickly added. Nkechi sighed and stood, wiping her hands on the edge of her wrapper. She walked toward her daughter and gently held her by the shoulders. "Amara, my child, I understand you meant well. You have a good heart. God sees it. But we are poor. Do you understand? We don't have food to spare like rich people. What if I couldn't find anything for you to eat tonight?" Amara looked up into her mother's tired eyes. But it was you who taught me to be kind. You always say, help others when you can. That's what I did. Her mother's stern expression faltered. The fire in her voice softened. "Yes," she whispered, "I did teach you that." She knelt slowly before Amara, her eyes now level with her daughter's. "But I also need you to learn something else, my love. Kindness is beautiful, but you must also be wise. You are just a little girl. You shouldn't be talking to strangers, do you hear me? That man, we don't know who he is or where he came from. He may look weak today, but some people pretend. This world is not always kind." "I know," Amara said quietly. "But I saw his eyes. He was hungry, really hungry. He even cried." And Katie stared at her daughter. This small child with such a large heart, a mixture of pride and fear battled in her chest. Pride that her daughter was good, fear that such goodness might one day get her hurt. She pulled Amara into a hug, wrapping her arms around her. "Don't stop being kind, and never, ever go too close to strangers. They sat in silence for a while, the orange rays of the setting sun peeking through their window, painting the room with warmth. That night, as Amara lay on the thin mattress she shared with her mother, she thought about the old man. Who was he? Why was he alone? She didn't know his name, but she decided to call him Grandpa because of his grey hair. Unknown to Amara, the man they saw sitting helplessly by the school gate was not a poor man. He was a billionaire. Before the wrinkles, the torn clothes, and the smell of the streets swallowed his identity, he had worn suits stitched in Italy, driven cars with leather seats that warmed themselves, and signed business deals that shook hands across continents. His name was Chief Anthony Ikenna-Modi, a Nigerian-American who had spent over 30 years in the United States, building a real estate empire from nothing but grit and vision. His name had once graced the covers of business magazines. The Nigerian-American genius, in Manhattan, from orphan to mogul. He had built homes for people, sponsored scholarships for students he never met, given millions to charity. At 60, he decided to return home to Nigeria finally, to oversee the company he had established while he was away in the US. It was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter, a peaceful one. After all, he had lived the fast-paced life. Now he simply wanted to rest and watch his company grow. He could feel it in his bones, the pull of home. He pictured himself setting up a quiet foundation in his hometown, a library for young people, a hospital for mothers. He had plans, big plans. He flew in quietly, leaving his children in the US as his wife was late, but something went wrong. No one knew exactly what happened after his return. He simply disappeared into thin air. His number stopped working. Years later, he was sitting by a dusty road in the very remote Anioma village, bearded, broken, bent. His clothes were ragged. He spoke to no one, asked nothing from anyone. People said he was mad. Others said he was just another unfortunate soul. But no one knew. No one asked. And Chief Anthony didn't even know who he was anymore. He simply became part of the background, like a faded poster on a wall. People passed, children stared, traders whispered, but no one got close. Until Amara, the little girl who didn't see a madman, but a man in need, gave him her lunch that morning. The next morning, Nkechi rose earlier than usual to prepare their meal. She fried some akara with the last beans they had left in the house. She had made up her mind the night before. She would fry a little extra, not for themselves, but for him. That quiet, fragile old man her daughter had shown unexpected kindness to. She didn't know who he was or where he came from, but something about Amara's story stuck with her. The way the child had described his tears, the way she said he held the food and wept. It unsettled her, in a way she couldn't explain. She knew what hunger looked like, what it felt like to be ignored, invisible, poor. She had lived it. But what she saw in Amara's eyes was deeper. When Amara woke up, half-dressed and rubbing sleep from her eyes, she was surprised to see her mother still in the kitchen. Nkechi had just placed the last ball of akara on a small piece of brown wrapping paper. She folded it carefully, turned to Amara and handed it over. "Take this to your old friend," she said. Amara blinked in confusion. "You made food for him?" Nkechi nodded and walked over to the cupboard. From behind the sack of gari, she pulled out another lunchbox and placed it in Amara's school bag. "This is yours. That," she said, pointing to the warm parcel, "is his. Don't mix them." Then she added, "But listen to me, Amara. This is not something you do every day on your own. If you want to give him something, you must always tell me first. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mama," Amara replied. "We don't have much," Nkechi continued. "But as long as I have something, no matter how little, I'll make sure that man doesn't go hungry." Amara nodded quickly, holding the parcel like a gift from heaven. She left home that morning with joy pumping through her veins. Her braids bounced as she ran down the path that led to the school gate. The moment she turned the corner, she saw him, sitting in his usual spot under the tree. His posture was hunched as always, but his eyes lifted the moment he heard her approaching. Without a word, she handed him the parcel. The man took it slowly, his fingers trembling against the warmth seeping through the paper. He looked at her, not just with gratitude, but with something else, something like reverence. "Thank you, my little angel." The name stuck. From that day, he called her that every morning, and true to her word, Nkechi kept her promise. Every morning after that, before Amara left for school, her mother would wrap something in brown paper and give it to her daughter. Sometimes it was roasted yam, other times cooked maize, or a few pieces of fried sweet potato. On days when there was absolutely nothing else, she would pack 2 dry biscuits. Sometimes Nkechi would go with Amara to deliver the food. They wouldn't talk much, just a quiet nod from her, a soft smile from him, and the offering would pass from hand to hand. There were no long conversations, no probing questions, just kindness exchanged in silence. The villagers began to notice. Some whispered about it, others shrugged it off. But Nkechi didn't care. She only knew that every time Amara returned from school and told her that Grandpa smiled today or he said God bless you again, a warmth would bloom in her chest, soft and strange. And so it continued, for days, for weeks. Then, just over a month later, something happened. Anioma village was calm that evening when 2 visitors, tall and well-dressed, strolled through one of the side paths leading from the palace. They were American Nigerians, young scholars sent by their university to collect data for a field study on rural development. The king of Anioma had received them warmly 2 days earlier and, pleased with their mission and respectful conduct, offered them a stay in one of the guest chambers within the palace walls. It was their second evening walk since arriving in the village. The younger of the 2, Toby, walked with a curious air, his camera swinging by his side, occasionally snapping images of the rustic environment. The older one, Tobeki, walked quietly beside him, his eyes wandering without focus, until they landed on a figure seated beneath a crooked wooden pole near a roadside bush. He stopped. Toby kept walking until he realized Tobeki was no longer beside him. He turned and saw Tobeki frozen, his gaze locked, mouth slightly parted. The old man sat slouched on the ground, his back against a tree, staring into nothing. His clothes were tattered. His eyes looked tired, lost. Tobeki began walking toward him, slowly at first, as if afraid the man might vanish like a ghost. No way. He stepped closer. His breathing quickened. Then he dropped to his knees in front of the man. "Daddy?" he whispered. The man blinked but said nothing. Tobeki's voice cracked louder. "Daddy, oh my God!" The old man stared at him like he was a stranger, no flicker of recognition, no change in expression. Just silence. Tobeki rushed over. "What's going on? Who is this man?" Tobeki looked up, his voice thick with disbelief. "It's my father. This is my dad." Toby recoiled slightly. "Your father? But I thought..." Tobeki nodded slowly. "We thought he was dead." He turned back to the man, who still hadn't spoken. Tobechi reached out and gently touched his arm. The skin beneath was dry, paper-thin, trembling. It felt like touching a memory long buried. "He doesn't recognize me," Tebeki said, voice barely a whisper. "He doesn't even know who I am." The silence between them grew heavier. After a while, the two young men stood. Tebeki, shaking, whispered, "We need to go back to the palace. The king needs to hear this." They ran back to the palace immediately. By the time they returned, panting and dusty, the king had retired to his back chamber, but returned quickly when they insisted the matter was urgent. And there, before the king, Tebeki spoke. "Your Majesty, that man by the bush near the roadside, he is my father. His name is Chief Anthony Ekenamodi." He paused, swallowing hard. The weight of emotions bore down on him. "We last spoke to him 3 years ago when he arrived at the Nigerian airport in Lagos. He had just retired and said he wanted to settle down quietly in the Lagos. He told us he was tired and just wanted peace. We all called him that evening. We joked. He was supposed to stay in his house in Lagos, where my uncle, Mr. Chuka, was already living with his family. But that was the last time we heard from him. Days passed, and we didn't hear from him again. We called, but his lines were off. Weeks turned into months. My eldest sister flew into Nigeria and went to his house. My uncle said he never came there, that they hadn't seen him. We searched. We hired private people to trace his phone. Nothing. It went dead. We checked hospitals, morgues, police records. There was no trace. Eventually, after almost a year, we assumed the worst, that he had died, that maybe he was attacked on the road or maybe something went terribly wrong. We grieved him, but not with closure. It was like burying someone without a grave. That homeless man I saw today is my father, Your Highness. The man we all assumed dead, Tebeki concluded, almost in tears. The king, who had listened attentively, finally spoke. "You're sure this man is your father? He has been around for over 3 years. We had wanted to send him out of the village when we started seeing him around, but on a second thought we let him be, especially because he looked calm and harmless." Tebeki nodded. "I am sure. His face may be older, sunken, but I know my father. Even in his silence, I know him." Without hesitation, the king signaled 2 of his guards. "Go bring him here at once. Please be gentle with him." The guards did as instructed. It didn't take long. When the man was brought into the palace, he made no fuss. He simply looked around, confused but compliant. The king offered him a seat and began to ask him questions. His name, his origin, where he had been. He said nothing, just sat, staring, his mouth slightly open, as if trying to remember something that refused to come back. Tebeki stepped forward and knelt in front of him again. "Daddy, it's me. It's Tebechi, your son." Still no response. The man blinked slowly, then looked away. Tebeki stood and moved back, tears already rising in his eyes. He had found his father, but it was like finding a house with the lights turned off and the windows shut. The man before him was alive, but not fully present. The king let out a long, heavy sigh. "This is deeper than we thought." Tebeki clenched his jaw and whispered, "What happened to you, Daddy?" But the man didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, as if the answers were buried there. Tebeki stood up and bowed before the king. "Your Majesty, please, I want to make a humble request," he said, his voice steady but worn. "Please kindly give my father a small place to stay till I finish my project. A few more weeks, no more. I will bear the cost. I can't let him go back to the streets. I will take him back to the city with me when leaving. I can't leave him behind again." The king, a wise man who had watched generations come and go, studied the young man in silence for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "There is a small hut behind the northern wall," the king said. "It is quiet, near the trees. The air is clean there. Let him stay. And I will assign a palace guard to watch over him, day and night. You need not worry." Tebeci's shoulders sagged in gratitude. "Thank you, Your Majesty, thank you." That night he called his siblings in America. Their voices were loud with shock, disbelief, then tears. The eldest, Ifoma, could barely speak at first. Then finally she whispered, "Book me a flight. I'm coming to Nigeria." By morning, arrangements had already begun. Tebeci walked through Anioma's local market the next day, picking out new clothes, simple but dignified, a clean wrapper, 2 shirts, and a proper pair of sandals. He even bought a small bottle of perfume and soap for his bath. The palace maids began bringing food to the hut twice a day: fruits, yam, warm pepper soup, and water. The guard stood nearby at all times, firm but gentle. Tebeci visited frequently, sitting beside the man who had raised him, trying to speak, to remind him to reach into the hollow place where his father now seemed to float. But still, no words. Not until the 3rd morning. Tebeci had brought bananas that day. He set them down on the low stool near the mat where his father sat, gazing at the floor as usual. Tebeci didn't expect anything, but just as he was about to stand up and leave, his father spoke for the first time since he found him. "Bring me my little angel," he said calmly. Tebeci froze. He turned slowly. "What did you say?" The old man looked at him. His eyes, though distant, held something now, a thread of focus. "My little angel," he repeated. "The girl that gave me food." Tebeci blinked rapidly, stunned. "Girl?" The man nodded once. "She gave me rice and akara. She smiled at me. She is my angel." A chill ran through Tebeci's spine. He crouched beside him. "Daddy? Who is she?" But the man said no more. He simply closed his eyes, a faint sigh escaping his lips, as though speaking had drained the last of his strength. Tebeci stood in silence for a long moment, the phrase echoing in his mind. My little angel. Who was she, and where could he find her? Meanwhile, across the village, Amara walked to school slower than she ever had before. Her feet dragged. Her eyes scanned the roadside carefully, clinging to a quiet hope. But the old man was gone. For days now, his corner had remained empty. It was as though he had vanished into thin air. Each day she carried her packet of food, hoping he would return. Each day, her small heart broke a little more when he didn't. Her mother had noticed, of course. One morning, Nkechi stopped her just before she stepped out. "Amara," she said softly, "don't be sad. That man, he might have moved. He's homeless, remember? He may have found somewhere else to rest." Amara nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe it. "I didn't even get to say goodbye," she whispered. That same afternoon, Tebeci returned to the very place where he had first found his father, by the bushy bend near the school gate. The spot was quiet. He began asking questions. He spoke to a roadside fruit seller, then a boy selling sachet water, then a woman roasting corn by the junction. Most shrugged or shook their heads, but one old woman who sold firewood nearby squinted and leaned forward. "Old man with grey beard?" she asked. "Used to sit over there?" "Yes," Tebeci replied quickly. She nodded. "A little girl used to bring him food every morning. Small girl, school uniform, very respectful, always smiling." Tebeci's heart jumped. "Do you know where she lives?" The woman paused. Then she pointed across the field. "Follow that small path. Go straight till you reach an old mud house with a cassava tree beside it. Her mother sells in the market. That's where they live. Without wasting a second, Tobeki thanked her and ran back to the palace. "Toby," he said, bursting into their guest chamber, "we're going out." "Where?" Toby asked, startled. "To find my father's little angel." The walk to Amara's house was short but heavy with expectation. Tobeki's heart pounded the closer they got. They got to the house and knocked gently. The wooden door creaked open and Amara stepped out. She looked up at them curiously. Her face was soft, innocent. Toby spoke first, stunned. "She's just a child." Amara blinked. "Good afternoon, sirs." Tobeki took a step forward, unable to speak at first. Finally, he crouched down and said gently, "Did you used to give food to an old man who sat near your school?" She nodded slowly, eyes wide. "Yes, I called him Grandpa, but he's not there anymore. I've been looking for him." Tobeki's throat tightened. "He's my father," he said softly. "He's safe now. He's in the palace. He asked for you. He called you. His little angel." Amara dashed into the house to call her mother. She came out and Tobeki repeated the reason for his visit. Together they made their way to the old man's hut. When they arrived at the hut, the old man was sitting outside, looking like he was waiting for something. When Amara stepped into view, everything changed. His face lit up. "My little angel," he said, voice warm, alive. Amara ran the rest of the way to him. He opened his arms and she went straight into them, wrapping her tiny arms around his shoulders. Tears welled into Becky's eyes. His father, who hadn't spoken to anyone in days, was now laughing. "Thank you," he said softly, holding her at arm's length, looking directly into her eyes. "Thank you for seeing me when the world walked past. For feeding me." Amara just smiled. Minkeichi watched quietly, her throat tightening. Her own eyes misted as she saw the way the man looked at her daughter. Not with pity or charity, but with pure, unfiltered gratitude. He stood and reached for Nkeichi's hand. "Madame," he said, "thank you for raising such a girl. You gave more than you know." Nkeichi curtsied, lost for words. All she could do was nod. He turned back to Amara and held her tiny hands between his own. "Will you come and visit me sometimes?" he asked gently. Amara nodded quickly. "Every day if Mama lets me." "Then I will wait for you, every morning," he replied. Behind them, Tobeki could only watch in silence. So could Toby. 2 weeks later, the data-gathering project was complete. Tobeki and Toby had packed their bags and prepared their documents. Their work was done, but their hearts were heavy. Not just because of the lives they had encountered, but because of the man they were now responsible for. Chief Anthony Mordi still didn't recognize Tobeki. His oldest daughter, Ifoma, had arrived in Nigeria 5 days earlier, but was staying in a hotel in Lagos, as insisted by Tobeki. The plan was simple. They would leave Animoma that morning, drive down to Lagos, and from there begin the careful process of healing and reintroducing him to his world, his true world. They had thanked the king in a private farewell at sunrise. The king had blessed them with kind words and cola nuts and offered to help any time they needed him again. But just as they were loading their bags into the car, Chief Mordi tugged lightly at Tobeki's shirt and whispered, "Can I see my little angel one more time?" Tobeki hesitated. The old man still did not fully grasp what was happening. He didn't remember Tobeki as his son. He couldn't recall the life he had built or the family he had left behind. His memories flickered like candlelight, dim, but the one constant in his fractured mind was Amara, the child who fed him. So Tobeki nodded. He sent word to Amara's house. Minutes later, Amara arrived with her mother. She carried something in her hand. A tiny bag of roasted groundnuts and a small drawing folded neatly. When the old man saw her, he smiled immediately. The dullness in his eyes brightened just slightly. His lips parted in joy. "My little angel." Amara ran to him, threw her arms around his legs and held him tightly. Nketi stood at a distance, quietly watching, her own eyes misty. "I'm traveling," he said, holding her. "They say I'm going to a big city. I don't know why, but I wanted to see you." Amara reached into her bag and handed him the folded paper. "It's a new one," she said proudly. "Me and you in a big car." He opened it slowly. It was a crayon drawing of them both inside a car, waving at people from the windows with words scribbled underneath. "Goodbye, Grandpa. Come back soon." Amara stepped back, looking up at him. "We will miss me." And with that, she turned, walked back to her mother, and waved until the car disappeared down the road. The journey to Lagos was long but smooth. Chief Modi sat quietly in the back seat between Tobeki and Toby, staring at the sky most of the way. He didn't speak much. When they reached Lagos, they went to Ifoma's hotel and picked her. They decided to take him to his old house first, the house he had built with pride before returning to Nigeria. The same house his younger brother lived with his family. They got to the house moments later and the gateman opened the gate. They drove in. The front door opened before they even stepped out. Uncle Chuka stood there, one hand holding the doorframe, the other wiping sweat from his forehead. Ifeoma waved excitedly. "Uncle, it's me. I brought someone," she said, thinking her uncle would be happy to see his brother. But the moment Uncle Chuka's eyes landed on the old man stepping out of the car, he stumbled backward. His face went pale. His hands trembled. And then... "Abomination!" he screamed. His voice thundered through the compound like an explosion. "You were not supposed to be seen again. I was not supposed to ever set eyes on you." Everyone froze. Even Chief Modi. Tobeki stared in shock. "Uncle, what are you talking about?" But Uncle Chuka took several steps back, as though he had just seen a ghost. The world around them felt like it had tilted. Tobeki turned to his father. He was staring at the house, silent, unmoved, but now his hands were trembling. He looked like he was beginning to remember something. Tobeka turned back to his uncle. "What do you mean, abomination?" "Uncle, what happened to my father?" But Uncle Chuka said nothing more. He turned and ran back into the house, slamming the door behind him. Tobeki and Ifeoma stood rooted in place, their eyes locked on the door that had just been slammed shut. In that moment, neither of them could begin to imagine the storm that was quietly building behind those walls, the buried secret that had lived in silence for over 3 years. A secret so dark, so unexpected, it would not only explain their father's mysterious disappearance, it would shake everything they thought they knew about their family. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to watch out for part 2, where the mystery behind Chief Anthony Ikenemodi's sudden disappearance and how he ended up homeless on the streets will finally be revealed. You'll also see how Amara's simple act of kindness transforms her life in the most unexpected way. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when it drops. Bye for now.